Mission complete.
I have a confession to make. I am piss poor at strategy games. In the coke-fueled LAN parties of my adolescence, I routinely came in dead last in matches of Command & Conquer Red Alert and Civilization 2, and living in South Korea hasn't exactly made me feel any better about my inability to accomplish anything meaningful in StarCraft. However, surprisingly, if you put me in front of a chessboard and give me ample amounts of time, I can usually handle myself with some semblance of skill. Luckily for me, Frozen Synapse, the new tactical strategy game from Mode 7 Games, plays much more like chess than it does like Civilization, albeit a game of chess where both players take their turns at the same time, and one where pieces have machine guns and rocket launchers. Frozen Synapse is, at least in description, a pretty easy game to understand. Two different teams of units face off in a top-down arena, and the last team standing wins. You're the tactician who controls the movements and behaviors of your team members, and these units will live and die based on your decisions to move them towards or away from cover. The game is both turn-based and simultaneous. Both you and your opponent plan the moves for your soldiers at the same time, and when you've completed them, you submit your turn, and the game proceeds in unalterable real time for the next 5 seconds. In this way, Frozen Synapse is a game that requires extreme strategy and foresight. You have to plan the next 5 seconds of each of your units' lives, not just with an eye for their positions and the positions of their enemies, but also with due consideration paid to where your enemies might be moving at the same time. Your fortunes can easily flip from a near-certain victory to yet another crushing defeat if you plan for your enemy's rocket unit to move behind a wall, and instead he charges into the open and blows a hole through your fortification, exposing your snipers to deadly machine gun fire. 5 seconds is the difference between finally winning a match and yet another click on the restart game button. One of the greatest strengths of Frozen Synapse is the way it lets its units interact with each other. There's 5 troop types wielding either shotguns, sniper rifles, machine guns, rocket launchers, and grenades, and I think most strategy games would probably reduce this to a pretty simple rock, paper, scissors type dynamic where maybe rockets nearly always beat machine guns nearly always beat shotguns, and so on. Although there is some semblance of this, and some units do have distinct advantages over others in certain situations, it's not impossible, or even uncommon really, for disadvantaged units to pull out unlikely victories against a favored side just by using clever tactics. Even if one side has a tremendous advantage, the game usually feels like it's up for grabs until the final body falls. Although the meat of Frozen Synapse is definitely intended to be its online multiplayer, which we'll talk about in a minute, there actually is a pretty sizable single-player component to the game as well. It comes with a campaign that has a little bit over 50 missions, and it has a decent, if otherwise unremarkable, story, and also it has the ability to instantly jump into skirmishes against the AI, or, if you choose to, generate your own scenarios to make these skirmishes as hard or as easy as you wish. However, like I said, the meat of Frozen Synapse is definitely its multiplayer. Unfortunately, at the time of this review, this tends to be sort of a mixed bag. I have no complaints about the interface, which features a built-in lobby-wide chat and makes it very, very easy to find an opponent and enter a game. The problem is that it's extremely rare to find opponents who are focused on the game at hand. It's happened to me once or twice, but the rest of my games were against opponents who took half an hour or more to make their moves. This is a direct result of the game allowing you to play as many games as you want consecutively. What this leads to is something that feels very much like chess by mail, where I load up the game, make my moves, and then wait, sometimes hours, for an email notification to inform me that my opponents have moved. Rinse and repeat, sometimes for days, until the game is finally over. My only other serious complaint with Frozen Synapse is that the maps and unit placements are usually random, which sometimes leads to unbalanced situations where one side has a distinct advantage over the other. Since the difference between victory and defeat is often very slight, losing even one unit to unfortunate initial placements is often enough to seal your fate one way or the other. Overall, Frozen Synapse is an excellent game that will provide a serious mental workout for patient players. There's a sizable single-player portion here, and there's a lot of replay value to be had in skirmishes against the AI, but it is a shame that the remarkably slow pace of the online multiplayer makes it borderline impossible to start and finish a game in less than a few hours. Still, even if this genre wasn't largely devoid of new games, Frozen Synapse would still be worthy of attention based on its merit and execution alone. I give Frozen Synapse 4 stars out of 5.